Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Madison, Wisconsin. I think we'll get started. So welcome to the O-Grain Conference, the O-Grain Organic Grain Conference. I don't even know what number we are now at the Organic Grain Conference. We started, I think, back around 2016 with Anders Gerda, starting the first cohort of organic grain workshops on the UW-Madison campus. And for those of you that have been to the conference in the past, we've always hosted on the UW-Madison campus, and we've evolved and grown and are now at the beautiful Monona Terrace, which we're really hoping will bring you a great experience. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Erin Silva. I'm a professor at UW-Madison and also an extension-funded specialist focusing on organic systems. I've been at UW-Madison working in organics since 2006, and it's wonderful to see the community and the industry grow. We certainly have some challenges ahead of us, but we have a lot of opportunity as well. So looking forward to coming together in community and fellowship and learning over the next 2 days to talk about what we can do together collaboratively as an organic grain community to learn and improve, and in the spirit of organic continuous improvement, look at how can we support each other in improving our production practices and building a market and a system where we all grow and thrive. Just want to recognize some of our sponsors. We have a lot of sponsors. We certainly don't do this alone. There's a big team at UW-Madison working on putting this conference together, Hannah Francis being absolutely key, and we have other members of the Silva Lab working the registration and facilitating the event. So if you see them, give a thanks. They've done an incredible job. Artisan Grain Collaborative, Alyssa Hartman, we're so grateful for the partnership of Artisan Grain Collaborative over the past few years. Just an absolutely amazing organization focused on food grade grains and building local and regional food systems, and just have so enjoyed working with Alyssa and her team and bringing this together. So as you go through the conference agenda, you see that there's an integration of workshops for farmers of all scales and all sorts of production approaches. So everything from smaller scale food grade grains to commodity scale grains. And we really create an agenda and an environment where we really welcome all sorts of organic farmers, those that are new and transitioning, those that are experienced, those that are running split operations, and those that are coming from a vast geographic region. And with that, we definitely are focused here in the upper Midwest and pull a lot of farmers from Wisconsin and Minnesota and Iowa. But we've also been so thrilled over the past couple of years to have collaborations with Dr. Matt Ryan's lab at Cornell University and welcome the New York farmers that have come out here for perhaps the first time. So it's just wonderful to see the conference grow and the representation for different regions and our continued partnerships. So like I mentioned, not only have we really built this event with work from our coordinating committee, from the different organizations that plan the event, but we couldn't do this without our sponsors and exhibitors. And have some of them listed here on the slide, but thank all of you that have come here to set up booths and to also share your knowledge. Again, this is really built on community and building a community of resources, farmers, and knowledge sharing so that we can all succeed. Just some housekeeping. The restrooms, I think the closest restrooms are if you kind of go towards the parking lot and turn left to the far end near the gift shop. So it's a little bit of a hike down there. We have this main area here where we have exhibitors, but we also have some breakout rooms, and they're labeled on your agenda, and they're marked outside the door. There is a breakout room right across the hall, but there's also a breakout room around the corner, so you may have to go around the corner depending on what session that you want to go to. We've really taken, and I encourage you to continue to give us feedback because we continue to evolve the event depending on farmer feedback and exhibitor feedback. And one of the key pieces of feedback we've gotten is you guys want more time for networking and talking. So we've really tried to structure and build the agenda to bring in more time to talk to each other, to be able to talk to the exhibitors. And again, really that focus on building community. So interspersed throughout the agenda, there's lots of breaks, there's lots of time to talk can network. And we've also built in at the end of the day roundtables, which is time to be able to come together in small groups around various topics. You can float across the roundtables and try to hit several roundtables, but again, very intentionally put in there to build community and allow you to have time to network and get to know each other. I think that's all for housekeeping. Anders Gerda wanted to come up and make an announcement.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Anders Gerda. I've worn a lot of hats here over the years, but today I am wearing a hat as a representative of the UW Organic Collaborative, which is a group of students, staff, and faculty at UW, all dedicated to organic research, extension, and outreach. And that group wants to hear from you all so that they can all do even better than they're currently doing. So we have a survey. And this survey is pretty quick, about 5 minutes, and it asks you what your biggest challenges are so that we can better create programs and projects that can help address those challenges, what kind of resources you want, what you want those resources to look like, how you want to be able to access those resources. And effectively, it's an opportunity for you to tell us what we are getting right and maybe what we need to work on as far as organic and transitioning research and extension and outreach. And so if you can take the survey, we'd greatly appreciate it. There's a UW Organic collaborative table at the very back corner over there. There's a table tent with a QR code you can easily scan to be able to take it on your phone. There's also paper surveys that you can pick up there and drop off there. Registration table also has the QR. So in those inevitable moments over the next couple days where you're milling around wondering what you should do next, here's your answer. 5 minutes. We really appreciate the feedback. You can help us help you. Thanks.
Thanks, Anders. And we really do take that feedback to heart, not only with this event, but our programming moving forward. And we do tailor workshops or virtual events, grant proposals, research to what you need. We really pride ourselves in trying to be able to respond to farmer needs and questions, and hopefully make your operations more successful and profitable, and be able to benefit the organic community as a whole. So with that, I think we can jump into the first talk, organic markets. And we intentionally put organic markets first because at the core of things, we can do an incredible job growing a crop, but if we don't have a place to market or can't anticipate where the markets are going, no matter what we grow, we need to get it off the farm and sold. So purposely put this talk first to kind of set the stage of where organics is at and where organics might be going. Definitely is a bit of a volatile time and a little bit of a changing landscape from what we saw even a year or two ago. So we're thrilled to have as our first speaker Alexander Schultz. And Alexander is from Mercaris/Argus Media. I think you say Argus Media now. And I've heard him talk in the past, and it does an incredible job in terms of being able to describe what's happening on both a national and global scale in terms of organic grain markets. We did set a fair amount of time for this discussion, and Alex is going to present a landscape and give an update, but we also want to give time for audience discussion. And that's true throughout all the topics, that we really value audience participation and discussion. So in the past, we've kind of run around with microphones. I think we're going to try something different, see how it goes. So after Alexander talks, although I think you can raise your hand if you have a clarifying question, but if you could wait till the end to ask questions, what we're hoping people can do is go up to the microphone so that we're not running around. So we can kind of make a line. We'll see how many questions there are about organic markets. And after the presentation, ask questions by coming up to the front here. So with that, I will hand it over to Alex.
Good morning. Happy I got this time slot. Hopefully y'all had your coffee. Someone was asking me before I came up here if I have good news today. Depends who you ask, but most people would say I don't. Unfortunately, no, it's a tough time in organic markets. It's been a very volatile time, and hopefully I can at least provide some information that you can all think about. got a nice introduction, but just to give it again, my name is Alexander Schultz. I work for, it's now Argus Media. It was formerly Mercaris. One of you are probably more familiar with under that name. I'm a senior reporter there covering organic markets, primarily organic feed markets, which I'm going to be covering, though we'll get a little bit into food grade. We're going to start with a discussion of kind of the key commodities, soybeans, corn, and wheat. I'm going to get into a few other things that we're watching in organic markets in the near future. And then from there, I'm going to have a brief discussion of the rising trend of organic soybean imports from Africa. And then hopefully we'll have time for questions because, I don't think I can talk for 70 minutes without putting some of you to sleep. So we'll have plenty of time for questions. All right, here is the slide the lawyers make me put up. You guys read all of that already. Great. All right. So we'll start with a little bit of discussion of demand. Kind of as Aaron said, there's no reason growing the crops if no one's going to use them. So we'll start with a little bit of discussion of the organic feed demand. So we are expecting organic feed demand to recover in 2023, 2024. So this marketing year that we're already a couple months into, should have noted these numbers come from our November 2023 commodity outlook. So some of them are a little old, and you'll hear me a couple of times, making some addendums on things that have changed as we've got more information since. But in the last marketing year in 2022-23, frankly, a lot of the poultry guys kept product off of the shelf. They had capacity to grow more chickens and put more organic chicken on the shelves, but because of high feed prices, because of significant uncertainty in consumer demand, they simply decided it wasn't worth it. And as a result, we saw some laxing in organic demand. Though, as we've talked to both those poultry guys and people who supply them, they indicated they are expecting a return to expansion come Q2, Q3 this year. So not quite, but in the next months is when they're expecting that. The dairy side is a little bit opposite. We are expecting to see some continued consolidation in that area, as has been the trend for several years now. It's simply a lot of those organic dairy farms didn't want to pay the high feed costs, and they didn't have anyone to take over the operation, so they're leaving the business. It's where we're losing a lot of those, as well as simply, normal churn and normal adjustments as demand comes in a better match with supply. In terms of what that demand is going to be, we expect to see some expansion in organic soybean meal demand, of course, our main feed. And on the others, on your canola, on your sunflower front, we're expecting those to remain low, as they have in the past couple of years, especially as organic soybean meal prices come down. We'll see more shifts into that, so we'll see some slight recovery in sunflower, but expect canola to come down slightly. Now, like I said, these numbers are a little bit old. We put this together in November, and we've been watching for some of that Q2, Q3 demand to come into effect. And at this point, those people have not really entered the market. I've been talking to a lot of the traders and brokers that supply the organic poultry operations. And at this point, the organic poultry producers broadly are not in the market filling out the Q2, Q3. They're going hand to mouth, which is a phrase you're going to hear me say a lot today. They're not building stocks, and they're not really showing through their demand that they're going to expand. So if that's going to come to materialize, will be important in the next 2-3 weeks to keep an eye out for that. We are seeing some bookings in Q2, but people are just really filling demand as they need it at this point. So a lot of uncertainty in that space. Now, organic commodities are no good if no one buys them, and they're no good if no one wants to eat them at the end of the day. So a brief discussion on organic food demand on the consumer side. These numbers are from our good friends at the OTA. You can see we have continued to see expansion in organic food purchasing up through 2022. We're at top 60 billion for the first time. Obviously, some of that expansion was simply a result of inflation, but there was also growth in organic food consumption on consumers. Now, in terms of the share of organic consumption, that's a little bit more of a colored picture. You can see this line on the chart here that shows a percentage that's organic, and here we include both food from home and food away from home. You can see that jumped in 2020, and it was COVID. No one was going out to restaurants. You eat all your food at home. People were maybe buying a little more organic food because they wanted what they at least perceived as healthier food for their families. So we saw a little bit of a jump there, but as you look at those 2022 numbers, you can see it's come back to that about 2.5% level where it had been seen beforehand and what's sitting after. So there is continuing to be plenty of growth on that side, which will continue to hopefully keep some organic in the organic market, but really has yet to really significantly penetrate. Like I said, it's been at that 2.5 level, not above it, with the exception of COVID for a while. So plenty of room for growth and plenty of uncertainty. And obviously, all this goes out the window if we have a recession and consumers lose income and stop buying organic or move back to conventional or whatnot. All right. Now, that was just a brief look at demand. Most of you, at least I think I know a lot of you are on the supply side, so I'll spend a little bit more time talking about that. In discussions of organic acreage does continue to grow in the United States. In 2023, we estimate that there's a 1.5% increase in acreage. I will note those are preliminary 2023 numbers. Our final 2023 acreage estimates will be coming out just in a few weeks. I'm working to finalize those right now with my colleagues. But at this point, we are seeing continued expansion. And within that, we are seeing some adjustments. Get that a little bit more, but we're seeing growth in corn, growth in wheat. We're seeing a little bit of decline in soybeans. I'll get into more detail in my next slide. So we're seeing some adjustments. A lot of these acreage moves were driven by, the pretty volatile, crazy markets we had in the past couple of years when prices jumped significantly, when there was significant supply chain issues. And now things are trying to find a new normal. Maybe that's another thing you're going to hear me a lot is, what's the new normal in the market going to be now that we're leaving the volatility of the past couple of years? So now I'll move on to the first commodity I'm going to get into, which is organic soybeans. Another theme. There are a lot of organic soybeans out there. Frankly, probably too many, which is what's putting a lot of bearish pressure on prices. When we saw those organic soybean prices jumping, when they were hitting $30, $35, $40 delivered in the upper Midwest, that obviously encouraged farmers to, find any plot of land they could and plant soybeans on it. We saw like a 50% jump in acreage across just a few years. And as a result, we saw a significant increase in production. You can see we saw a bump of 94,000 acres and 8.1 million bushels of production. And at that point, there was maybe some interest in that as a lot of the end users were really concerned about supply risk and were willing to buy everything up. But now as the import situation has normalized and we've seen the market generally normalize, we're seeing this really weighing on the market. We had these huge waves of production. We had record production in 2022. We had the second highest production record in 2023. And that puts a significant glut of organic soybeans in the market that are continue to weigh on prices and keep bearish pressure for the near future. Something to note here, you can see these orange lines from beginning stocks. You can see that this is what I'm talking about. This is the surplus that we have in the market. Not only are there a lot of organic soybeans being produced, but they're sitting in the market there. And it's going to take a while for us to really eat up that long position. And it's going to take eating up that long position for any sort of significant bullish pressure to return to the organic soybean market. Now, the organic soybean market is primarily fed by imports. Only about a third is supplied domestically. Those numbers vary a little bit by year to year, but most of our stuff is imported. So if we're going to talk organic soybeans, we got to talk organic soybean imports. Across the last marketing year, 22-23, organic soybean imports remained very robust. Prices were still high. They were still, high 20s for much of it, and high mid-20s, so that continued to incentivize the bringing in of organic soybeans and organic soybean meal to the United States. So even as imports came off a little bit from some of those highs in 2020 and 2021, 21-22, we did not see the sort of significant drop-off that we'd been hoping for. So with that high production and with these really high imports coming to the market, that's what's created this really long position in the market where there are, soybeans just about anywhere you look, and as a result, it's hard to build any sort of significant bullish pressure in the market. Now, as we look into 23-24, these numbers here for 23-24 and 24-25 obviously were our forecasts. We expect them, you can see, to drop down significantly. Now, I finalized our estimates for our January organic imports yesterday, so you're getting some really fresh data, not available to anyone else yet. And from the marketing year in November through January, we've seen organic soybean imports on a combined bean meal basis down about 15%, whereas we had been looking for something closer to a third. So even as prices have come off, we have continued to see significant volumes of organic soybeans coming into the United States from different suppliers. Now, we are finally at a point where I think that looks like it might be slowing down. Prices for organic soybeans and organic soybean meal are finally hitting that point, $21 for beans, $8.25 for soybean meal. Now the price of domestic is going to be is more competitive with the price of foreign beans. It used to be that I would hear all sorts of guys telling me that they knew there was organic soybean meal, U.S. produced, sitting down the street from them, but it was still price advantageous to bring in stuff from Africa or India or another one of our major suppliers, so they're continuing to bring it in. That's finally coming to an end. That's going to finally hopefully come to an end, and that will be really the thing that we'll be watching help normalize the market. The advantage of having an import-driven market like in the organic soybeans is that it's a lever you can kind of pull month to month. When you have a market driven by domestic production, you can only move that lever once a year. So if we see imports come off, which they have been, a lot of kind of that, some of that strength was driven by some strong imports in the early months of the market in here, that could help bring the market in a tighter balance. Now, I can see on the right side of my slide there, I have a breakdown of where those organic soybeans are coming from, and you can see there's been a big shift in the last few years. For a long time, India was our major supplier. It was a good deal for them. They wanted the oil. It was a good deal for us. We wanted the meal that they didn't want, so they were shipping us as much meal as they could, and we were buying about as much as we could. Well, then some U.S. soybean processors informed the Department of Commerce that they thought there were some hinky things going on with that pricing. The Department of Commerce investigated and determined, yes, India was illegally subsidizing soybean crush. So the government went in and told every Indian soybean crusher, here's a big stack of paperwork you got to do if you don't want a big tariff. And while the U.S. is a big importer, India was a big source for us. The U.S. is a relatively small source for Indian soybean meal. So a lot of those guys looked at this big stack of government paperwork the Department of Commerce sent them and said, yeah, we're just not going to do that. And as a result, they were hit with almost a 300% tariff. So they functionally left the market. Now, some of those guys did spend the time, they did the math, and they got a much more reasonable, about 10% tariff. And those guys are still in the market exporting to us. But yeah, you can really see that drop off in Indian product. Now, as a result, we've had to see several people step in. The big players, of course, Africa, which I'm going to get into in more detail later. But without Africa, we've seen Canada step in, we've seen Argentina step in. So we've continued. So we have seen that adjustment. A large part of that big jump in organic soybean pricing was the result of that loss of Indian supply. But now we're at a point where that's more normalized. So, like I said, a big thing that we're thinking about at Mercaris/Argus/whatever they're calling us now is what's the new normal going to be for the market? What are these more normal prices going to be? We used to have, prices, soybean prices here in the upper Midwest and the Corn Belt running, 18 to 20 bucks, barely moving for like 6 years. And then we had that crazy spike, and now the question is, now that things are reaching a new state of normal, a new balance, where's that balance going to be? And here, we have maybe some of our ideas on what that could look like. We've had a couple of changes. One is that we've finally seen a significant premium coming into the organic soybean oil market. It used to be that there was only a couple of cents premium for organic oil rather than conventional oil. You were milling it for the meal rather than the oil. But we have more recently seen that change where now you can get, 55, 60 for organic soybean oil. And that really helps for crush margins. Now you don't have to worry about essentially having a waste byproduct. Meal prices, currently if you look at imports coming into like Baltimore, they're running about 8 1/4, and that's where we think that's where they look to be selling, 8, 8 1/4. And if that's where the market is, if we're having a market with, $800 organic soybean meal and 60 bucks for your oil, that's going to put you at about a $22 soybean. So that's really the range that we're starting to look at as we think about what organic soybean price is going to be, like a $21, $22, $23. So definitely up from where it was in kind of the pre-COVID, pre-India trade dispute, pre-chaos era, but certainly down from those peaks in the 30s and, like I said, low 40s that we reached in the past few years. So, organic soybeans, where are we? I said it again. I said it before, I'll say it again. You'll hear me say something very similar when we get to corn. There are too many organic soybeans in the market. We put on too many acres, and those acres have not really come off significantly. We expect those acres to continue to come off a little bit more next year. There continue to be strong imports. Like I said, they're only down about 15% this marketing year. They weren't down much last marketing year. Canada and Argentina love sending us soybeans, and we love taking them. At least we have in the past. So the market's really at a point where we have to eat up this lawn supply that the market has realized. And that's going to really take three things happening. It's going to take organic soybean acres coming down, which we are expecting, dropped about 4% this past marketing year. We hope in 2023, we hope to see some further drops in 2024 as we see farmers move into more normal rotations. You know, I heard stories of farmers doing beans on beans on beans rotations to take advantage of that income. Obviously, your certifier doesn't like that, so a lot of guys are moving back into more normal rotations. And then if we see, like I said, if we see the poultry guys coming back to market, if we see organic poultry return to expansion, so there's a lot of spinning plates. If we see both of our supply pictures come off and if we see our demand picture come up, that's how we can eat up that long supply position. That's how we can move ourselves into a much more normal market position and see some bullish pressure return to the market. And sort of significant bullish pressure I wouldn't expect anywhere in the near future, but we could see, you know, like I said, kind of that like low to mid 20s be the new selling point for organic soybeans. There's a discussion of soybeans. We'll move on to what I know is another crop in many of your rotations, organic corn. And I'm sorry, this is going to sound very familiar to what I said about organic soybeans. There is a lot of organic corn out there. I was just, everyone I speak to in the organic corn market says it's, you know, every farmer has boatloads on their farm. There's boatloads sitting around, and there's boatloads coming in, frankly. You know, for organic soybeans, we had a peak in production in 2022 for organic corn that got pushed off a year. Just this past year, 2023, we had what we believe to be a record organic corn crop. Acres jumped significantly. We had fairly good yields, and as a result, we had some really strong production. You can see a gain of 24,000 acres, and that left us with a supply position of about 57 million bushels, 53 million from production, and another 4 million from carryover stocks in the prior year. And that's just a lot of corn sitting in the market. That without a lot of really demand returning, that has put a lot of bearish pressure. You know? Organic corn prices have been pretty dismal, have continued to come down. I remember just a couple of months ago when people were tugging their collars at prices dropping below $8 delivered into the Corn Belt. Well, I've seen organic corn contracts delivered in the upper Corn Belt for sub $7 at this point. So there's been plenty of bearish pressure in the market, like I said, as a result of just this incredibly long supply position. The organic corn market, unlike soybeans, is driven primarily by domestic production. You know, we're producing about 85 to 90% of what we need. And importing the rest, you know, the other 10 to 15%. So this is a really important picture to watch: is how is this organic acreage adjusting? And we are expecting that acreage to come off a little bit next year in 2024, just as a result of the supply picture. But as you can see, if you look at these, if you look at those orange bars, we are expecting to see a long market position continue in the coming years, to have essentially a long glut sitting in the market and continue to apply plenty of bearish pressure. So organic soybeans may have some potential return to a little bit of bullish pressure later this marketing year, if I should say, whereas we expect corn to remain in a bearish position for much longer. Now, with some of the significant drop-offs in organic corn pricing, paired with a market where we've seen significant increases in costs, there's a question that we've been asking, which is your standard organic rotation, soybeans, corn, wheat, going to be profitable? And here we have maybe just a little bit of an illustrative example of how it could frankly not be and the problems this could cause. So if you look at this chart here, you can see we have a couple of different examples of what this market could look like. You know, $25 soybeans, which I say is maybe a little optimistic. Wheat prices, you know, mostly driven by corn, and then a couple of variants on corn prices. And you can see at like an $8 corn, even with, you know, these increases in production costs, which are up significantly, almost a quarter, 20% for organic soybeans, more than a third for organic corn. If we have a market that sits where it is now, and like I said, this is actually a fairly bullish price for organic soybeans from how it's looking right now, and we have $7 corn, we've reached a point at which your standard organic rotation is not profitable. Obviously, this is going to cause plenty of problems in the market. If this persists for multiple years, we could see it significantly weighing on expansion in acreage. We could see some people leaving the market, especially people who go both conventional and organic. A lot of them might look at this math and simply say, why am I bothering building all this organic stuff if I'm not getting much of a premium for it? And a lot of them are going to go out and maybe ask their local implement dealer how much a sprayer is running these days. So if this kind of bullish price point continues, if we are seeing $7 corn and low 20s soybeans, that's kind of a dismal picture for the market. But in order to repair this, what we need is we need to see some of that production come off. We need to see supply come in a better match with demand. Now, like I said, organic corn, it's a domestic production-driven market, but that doesn't mean we can ignore our imports. So last marketing year, if I had been giving this talk to you a year ago and I'd been using our November 2022 outlook, I would have told you we expect organic corn imports to come down 31% in 2022-23. Well, that, to be frank, simply did not happen. They dropped instead only about 9%. They remained fairly robust. It simply was a similar picture. It still remained profitable to bring in organic corn from Turkey, from Argentina, from Canada. So we continue to see huge gluts of that come in. Cracked corn imports coming out of Turkey, though that's not really Turkish corn, we're actually up slightly in 22-23. Now, as we look into these 23-24 numbers again, this comes from our November numbers where we were expecting something like a 30% drop. Well, like I said, I have our preliminary import estimates through January, so November to January, the marketing year, imports are actually flat from where they were last year. Perfect. So, not only have we not seen the sort of drop we're seeing, like in soybeans, we haven't seen any sort of drop at all. Now, a lot of that strength in imports was driven by some large volumes that we saw come in earlier in the marketing year. There was one month where we got just like a massive load of whole organic corn out of Turkey, which is wild. And a lot of those early months are what's keeping it, keeping those imports flat. But if they continue to come off at a level more in line with what we've seen the past few months, that's where we could start to see this move, maybe not down to that 31% number that we had expected a couple months ago, but dropping off enough to help bring that market into closer balance. Like I said, though corn is a domestic-driven market, having this come off will help to bring that supply-demand picture in closer balance and would help to alleviate some of this bearish pressure that we've been seeing in the market. Kind of like I alluded to earlier, the problem, quote unquote, with having a domestic-driven market is you can only really change production once a year. You grow it and it's there. So the imports lever is a lot less powerful here than it is in the organic soybean market. Okay, so again, the simple question, where does this leave organic corn? Well, it's going to sound a lot like my organic soybean talk, unfortunately. There is too much organic corn in the market. It's a simple fact that too much has been produced, demand has not come in a place to meet that, and as a result, we are seeing significant bearish pressure in the market. We expect to see a continued long carryover position in the market, even if acres come off in 24-25. For this market to really see a return, we're going to have to see a much stronger drop-off in acres. Coming next year, we're going to have to see those imports come off a little bit more. And really, this is going to be a demand-driven picture. Does the organic livestock market come in to a large enough degree to offset this? To offset the supply picture. It's going to take a while for this to come in closer balance, and I would expect a bearish pressure to remain on the organic corn market for quite a while. That's corn. Lastly, kind of to finish up our organic rotation, a brief discussion on wheat. Wheat acreage has continued to see steady growth. It's the largest crop by acreage, largest organic crop by acreage, sorry, and it's continued to grow in the past marketing year. As you can see here, fairly steady growth across all of our varieties. It's moving up, but while acreage growth has been steady and progressive and moving up, the production picture has been much more colored. It really has been, there was a while where we basically had like 4 straight bad wheat crops. They were just not looking good. We had drought pictures, so we had drought issues to a lot of the major growing regions, especially out west, in the upper west, the upper high plains, like in Montana, or even down in Wyoming, up in Canada. And that poor drought led to lots of bad yields, and it led to the fact that while acreage was up, you can see we had years with down production. Now, this past crop was looking a little bit better. This past spring crop. Now, the winter crop that we have on the ground right now, I've heard is much more colored, or varied is maybe the generous way to put it. There's a lot of variety in how it's looking in the market. If you look out west in Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, it looks quite good. They got good rainfall, they got good snow cover, it's looking pretty good. If you look, I was just out in Michigan not too long ago talking to some farmers, and they were telling me it's not good there. They had to harvest soybeans late, they had wet fields. If they got anything in the ground, they basically had to mud it in and hope it worked out. So that crop's getting a little bit worse. If you look up north into Canada, I was just talking to a couple Canadian traders. They tell me that picture is also very poor. Not a lot of snow cover. I live in Minneapolis where we have no snow on the ground. I talked to those guys from Canada. They don't have much more than I do. So when they had some high rains come in, it flooded out. And if you look out into like New York, we have some decent acreage. It's a similar picture. Those guys did not get a good snow cover on their crop, and they got some high rains. So we're looking at some flooded out fields out there. So the organic, so as we look at the production picture, we're really going to have to keep an eye on how those yields come out. Now, like the positive picture for yields is shown in these charts here, which is maybe a little complicated, so let me explain. We have two charts here. These are showing our estimates of how many organic wheat acres there are under extreme or exceptional drought. And you can see, if we look to this November 2022, you can see there were large swaths of drought across some of the major growing regions up north. If you look up into like Montana, where they're growing large volumes of organic wheat, there was huge drought issues that continued up north into Canadian provinces, and that really weighed on production. Now, as we looked a year later, this past November, the moisture picture is generally looking quite a bit better. If you look out west, that stuff's really recovered. There's not much drought there. They've gotten some good rain. It's looking better. But we have in turn seen some drought come into Nebraska, Wyoming, which are the decent growing regions. So while it's an overall recovery in the moisture picture for the organic wheat crop is looking better, it continues to be kind of varied across your growing regions. And that's what we have to keep an eye on, is how some of those weather factors are going to evolve across both this coming winter crop and the next spring crop. That's really my main discussion of commodities, but I want to get into a few more things that us at Argus are keeping an eye on. One is something that I'm sure many of your certifiers have talked to you about recently, or I at least hope they have, which is the strengthening organic enforcement rule that's coming into effect in March. We were, of course, as interested in this as I'm sure many of you were, and we spent some time speaking to a number of our contacts, both importers and certifiers, asking them what they expected the impact of the SOE to be. And overall, the summary I got from them was they don't expect it to do much at all in terms of import volumes. Honestly, what I heard from most of them is more that it was too weak. There are a lot of people who wished it had been stronger. They were looking for something like a broad mass balance picture to allow better detection of fraud. But instead, we have a picture that, it has, those two factors. It has more middlemen that have to be certified, and it has these new electronic certificates that would be attached to any sort of imported organic product. Now, this certainly has some potential to cause some short-term drama in the market. I would, do all of these middlemen who now have to be certified know they have to be certified? Some of them might not. Might be a few months where a couple of people get caught flat-footed and have to recover and get certified, but that should pick it up. On the certificate side, it's the same thing. A lot of people are having to add new capacity. They're having to figure out how they're going to do this newfangled electronic import certificate, how they're going to handle that. And both the certify and import side, there's a little bit of concern that there'll be some growing pains over the first few months as that comes into effect. But as people get accustomed to it, they don't expect to see significant effects on import volumes in the coming months. I was just recently speaking to a trader who was telling me, like I said, kind of the story that says 2 week that that the interpretation of this, at least by a lot of certifiers, is that there are going to be a lot of kind of blank certificates rather than the picture. I think a lot of us looked at this earlier on, where it's going to be a certificate per load. It's more there's going to be a certificate that covers all of your African soybean meal imports. So again, a picture where I think some people would allow it to be a little bit stronger. Some people wish that it had been, a firmer clampdown on potentially fraudulent organic imports from Africa and other regions. There's also been another rule change, the recent livestock rule adjustments, and frankly, I don't have too much on that. Everyone I talk to says, I haven't looked at it. It's like 100 pages. Ask me next month. And I ask them next month, and they say, I haven't looked at it yet. Ask me next month. But that's not in effect until about 2025. That's just really some adjustments on organic livestock standards. And with the law and period of implementation, we don't expect a lot of chaos, though it will certainly add some cost to organic poultry production and could weigh on growth. Now, the other thing I'd like to discuss is the impact of interest rates. I was looking at to buy a new car recently. These new interest rates, they're certainly no joke when it comes to buying a car, and they're certainly the same when it comes to organic crops. As a result of the high inflation that we saw in the past few years, our good friends at the Federal Reserve stepped in and hiked interest rates. You can see on this blue line here tracking the prime rate, it went from sub 4% to more than 8%, more than doubled in the past couple of months. And as a result, that brought up the interest rate cost of holding on to organic crops. So this is more a concern for your end user side, but a lot of them are looking at this, and this changes the math of holding on to product. It used to be that you could really hold on to organic products and not have to incur significant interest rate costs. all you really did incur was the cost of your storage facility, but this is changing that math. That now a lot of those guys, they're concerned about price volatility, they're concerned about, prices coming down, they're concerned about having to pay these interest rate costs from holding on to product. And this is another factor that can continue to drive some lack of interest from end users on them not wanting to book out long-term contracts or get a significant long position because they don't want to be paying this. Also, we have the potential impact that this might, some farmers are probably thinking about this. Not so much on the interest rate cost side, they're storing on farm, but in terms of, these rates are affecting their rates, their loans as well. So, we're gonna have some farmers, many organic farmers got some decent cash from those high prices, but some of those who might have spent it on some nice new machinery might be looking at operating loans that are much higher rates than they were a couple of years ago, might be a little more willing to sell into the market. So we might have a factor where the end user is less willing to take product because they don't want to be paying the cost of holding on to it. Well, the farmer wants their money so they can pay off their loans, and that would, further drive some bearish pressure in the market, that it would be dumping product that really no one is interested in taking, and that could apply some further bearish pressure to both parts of the market. It's especially important to keep in mind that this increase in interest rate costs has come simultaneously with a decrease in organic soybean pricing. So I use soybeans as an illustrative example here. The corn picture is very similar. This is maybe a little more dramatic, but as you can see on our you can see from this line here, we see organic soybean pricing come off. It peaked in the high 30s, low 40s during that bit of volatility. And even as that's come off, though, we've seen, as a result of interest rates being continually hiked, though that seems to have finally stopped. It seems like the Fed has finally hit the brakes on that. It means that you have a point where you're losing money from the product sitting on your shelves in value, and you're losing money from paying these high interest rate costs. We're in a market where there are really three factors going on: high stocks, high interest rates, and declining prices. And this leads to a really awkward picture if you're someone who wants to hold on to organic commodities. This is another kind of complicated chart. Let me give a second to explain this. This is kind of our estimate of the gain and loss from holding on to organic soybeans across different periods. So this contains both the gain and loss month from the simple value, as well as that interest rate cost I had in the prior chart. And really, I want to kind of show the kind of three periods here to keep in mind. It used to be that this was really not much of a factor. We had stable pricing, we had low interest rates, so if you're holding on to organic soybeans, you weren't really taking much of a loss. There was certainly, benefits on holding on to it, and a lot of people want to take that. And then when we saw prices jumping, well, then you want to hold on to organic soybeans. You could buy them cheap, you could hold on to them for a few months, they jump in value. There's so much price risk in the market, and lots of end users were going out and buying huge volumes. You can see this kind of middle section here where there's significant price benefit to holding on to organic soybeans. And a lot of people went out and built out long positions on this. So they were worried about prices going up further. They were worried about simply having enough soybeans to feed their chickens or cows or whatnot, or feed their mills, and they're willing to do that. Well, it's kind of a third period here. You can see we've seen a significant reversal in that. From having those prices that are coming off significantly, from having these high interest rate costs, it's now at a point where holding on to that product is a really negative picture on your balance book. It can really hit you, and a lot of those end users have seen this picture, they've seen it in their spreadsheets, and it's made a lot of them very hesitant to add on product. But in a market that's oversupplied, that leads to a picture where we have a lot of stuff sitting on farm, and farmers are frankly not too excited to sell at these low prices. We have end users that aren't really willing to buy because they don't want to have to deal with prices potentially declining further, and these interest rate costs, and that's really kind of put a bit of a temper on the market. So I'm going to keep on. We could have a period where farmers might find the point to sell. Our end users can come to the market. The advantage of this is that finally we do have a little bit more price stability. Obviously, when prices were $35, there's plenty of area to go down, but when prices are $21, $22, $23, it's much less downward pressure. So this is going to regulate a little bit, but those high interest rate costs are going to remain. Interest rates are not going to come down significantly in the near future, though only Jerome Powell knows exactly how fast they're going to come down. So keep an eye on those interest rates, and that's going to really affect how willing end users are to enter the market. So let's take this slide to kind of maybe summarize my market picture before I move on to my discussion of imports. Like I said, kind of thoughts on the market, how I really orient myself is what's our new normal going to be? I think, we've exited the chaos of the past few years, and what's the new normal going to be? And the market in 23, 24 is going to be trying desperately to find what that new normal is. I stole this slide from my boss, and when he put this together in November, and you can see I extended out our actual known pricing a little bit longer. And props to my boss, Ryan Corey, that you can see it's actually pretty well in line with what he was expecting. Soybeans have been pretty flat recently. Organic corn has actually come down a little bit faster than we would have expected back then. But this is about the picture we're expecting. We expect to see soybeans remain fairly flat, though if we see that return in livestock demand later this year, that could apply a little bit more pressure to the market. The organic corn side, we'll remain bearish through really the balance of the market in here. We don't expect any sort of bullish pressure. We expect prices to remain low, to remain maybe coming down. When I look at new crop bids, what few new crop bids are out, they're not positive. So we expect to see some plenty of bearish pressure in the market. These markets are going to continue to find what's the price that leads to, the right shedding of acreage, the right level of imports to meet that demand, to meet the new demand picture in the market, and it's going to take a while to get there. Everyone I talk to has, I have the job of speaking to a lot of traders weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, and asking them what's going on with them. And it's a bit of a hard job right now because really nothing's happening in the market right now. No one's buying, no one's selling. Farmers see the prices and they're like, I'm not selling my corn and soybeans for this. I'm holding on to it. End users look at it and they tug their collars and say, I got screwed on this last time. I bought soybeans and corn, then prices dropped, and I got caught holding the bag. So no one's in this market at this point. No one wants to hold on to, no end user wants to hold on to product. Farmers don't want to sell. So the market's in a bit of an untidy equilibrium right now. Not really an equilibrium, but more of a waiting period, a Mexican standoff of the market, if you will. And when that's going to break is an open question. I like to tell a story. A colleague of mine was talking to one of our contacts who said, nothing's going to happen in the market until January 17th. And my colleague was intrigued and asked him why. He said, that's when your post-Christmas credit card comes due. Every farmer, January 17th, they're going to get the bill that says, you spent so much on the new PS5 for your son and the whatnots, and maybe they'll start to sell. Well, the last time I gave this presentation was January 18th, and it's been half a month since then, and I can say at this point the market has not picked up much. Not much has really happened yet. Like I said, there's a little bit of Q2 interest, but like I said, that's a hand-to-mouth picture. No end users are not in the market building up line, not in the market looking to lock up contracts for the balance of the market in year. A lot of farmers aren't looking to sell. And really what we need to wait for is, what we're looking for is when that changes. When is the demand break and livestock and the demand enters the market? And, it's hard to predict. I think it's going to take a little bit longer. Like I said, I think everyone kind of got burned in the chaos of the last few marketing years and is willing to hold off a little bit longer. A lot of them, frankly, have some of the support soybeans and corn they already have, so they don't really need to enter the market. In terms of new crop bids, I'm sure as many of you know, there really aren't any. No one's in the market. The new crop corn, soybean bids are here. I'm from Minnesota, so this region, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, are $16, $17. That's obviously not like a real bid. I'm sure most of you aren't going to sell your organic soybeans for $16, $17. Though if you are, I know plenty of people who'll be willing to buy them. That's just if someone's willing to sell, you'll buy it. But a lot of those people don't have serious new crop bids out. They're waiting. Everyone's holding their cards at this point, and it's going to take a while for that to come out. So, like I said, we hope the market's going to find a new normal soon. It's going to find new normal pricing. It's going to find a new normal supply-demand balance. But as we get there, there's going to be a little bit more chaos as the market tries to find that place. We're going to have to see some acres come off. We're going to have to see those imports come down, see demand picture come back. And if all of those spinning plates come together, then we can start to see some bullish pressure return to the market. Late this marketing year, early next marketing year. So it's going to be a little bit longer. We're still on the roller coaster for another marketing year, so at least. So with that, that's really our market outlook. I want to then just take a little bit to go through. This is a white paper we put out last year. I touched on this briefly earlier, that we've had a lot of chaos in the imports of soybeans. I'd like to get a little bit more detail of that. This is something that I used to have questions asked me all the time at conferences, so now I'm just going to get ahead of it and hopefully answer some of these questions with these next few slides. So some of this is going to retread a little bit, but let's set the picture again. The organic soybean market in the United States is driven by imports. We vary a little bit by year to year, but 60 to 70% is going to be coming in from foreign suppliers, and that's really, we just can't, we're not in a position to produce enough organic soybeans to meet our demand. So this is how things are. This is how things are expected to be. So with the imports remaining a necessary part of the market, even as we did see those acres come up, excuse me, it's me the question of where they're coming from. And it used to be India. Like I said, it used to be a really good deal. India wanted organic soybean oil. We wanted organic soybean meal. Everyone had a great time. Huge volumes that came in. You can see if you track this black line there at some months, supplying 70, 80% of organic soybean meal imports. And then, as I told you the story earlier, then the government said, this looks weird. At the encouragement of some organic soybean processors, they went in and found, yes, this is illegally subsidized in violation of international trade laws, so there's a big tariff in place now. And the second the tariff goes in, you see organic soybean imports soybean meal imports out of India take a huge drop off. So a lot of companies just didn't care to do the sort of bureaucratic work the U.S. government asked them to, and they said, we're just not going to ship to you anymore. And that was a factor in what drove our prices up. A lot of American companies were relying on the Indian product. They had maybe long-term contracts. They had guys that were buying from year in, year out, and those people were just exiting the U.S. market as a result of these new tariffs. And the organic market is generally pretty supply risk adverse. You don't want to not have soybeans to run your mill or soybeans to feed your cattle or ducks or chickens. So they was like, oh, we got to go buy stuff. We got to fill up. We got to make sure we have what we need. And that, as a result, significantly pushed up prices. And note, this is perfectly at the exact same time that we had all of the various import chaos as a result of COVID, when getting shipping containers was a huge struggle. And this has led to all sorts of new chaos in the market, pushed prices up. And with prices being pushed up, that led to plenty of encouragement for new players to come in the market. And who did that? Africa. Africa saw this as an opportunity. Africa has, in the past, supplied us with organic soybeans, but they weren't really a huge player in the market. We would get loads every now and then, some somewhat decent volumes, but they saw the U.S. market. They saw that this picture, that India wasn't going to start shipping us stuff anytime soon, and they were happy to step in. You can see from this map here on the left that we saw a lot of new certified operations coming online in Africa between 2021 and 2023. And a lot of those began producing soybeans. But one thing to note is that even as Africa has begun shipping us huge volumes of organic soybeans, that's only a fraction of their production capacity. They could continue to add more organic acres, not only from adding new operations, but from simply adding soybean acres to their existing farms. And that leaves them with plenty of space to continue to be a major player in the U.S. market. And a major player they have been. Across the 2022-23 marketing year, they went from being a bit players, you can see kind of that blue part of the bar chart, to being the new India, supplying us some months 70, 80% of our product, becoming huge players in the market. Frankly, a lot of the people who are exporting from Africa now are the same people who exported from India. They picked up, they moved to Africa, they began making deals with farms there. There's lots of great land. A lot of those guys are currently building new crush capacity in Africa. It used to be they were shipping us a lot of beans, shifting even more towards meals. They built some domestic crush capacity in the region, and they're going to continue to be a major player in the market. Like I said, we simply need imports to feed all of our organic livestock, and Africa has been more than happy to supply it. The reason India was sending us so much is that they're simply our lowest cost suppliers. They could send cheaper than anyone else, and why would you buy from Argentina when you could get cheaper stuff out of India? Now it's the same thing. You could get cheaper stuff out of Africa. Now, as cheap as India? No. And that's something that's going to supply some bullish pressure in the market. Like I said earlier, a new normal for the beans might be $21, $22, $23. Some of that is a result of this. Because the U.S. is so reliant on imports for our organic soybean supply, we end up as a price taker in the international market. We can't set the organic soybean price. We're reliant on following what our export partners are providing us with. Because if our prices are up here and Africa's prices are down here, a lot of traders are going to say, like I said, as I've done in the past, they're going to say, why am I buying expensive American stuff when I can bring new stuff in from Africa for much cheaper? The quality is maybe not as good. I've heard the beans, small, hard, roughing equipment, the meal, rejection at the border. There's certainly issues, but overall, the price advantage was there. And that price advantage has certainly come off as we've seen those prices move back to more reasonable levels, as we've seen, like I said, 8.25 organic soybean meal prices at like the Baltimore port. But overall, it's still been end up and that's really what's going to help us set the new normal in the market. Not only have they been shipping to us in the United States, but they've also been shipping huge volumes into Canada. The oddity of import data is that if you take a commodity and you process it in a country, it becomes a commodity of that country. If I take African soybeans into Canada and I mill it, they wave a magic wand and now it's Canadian soybean meal as far as anyone is concerned. So it's not possible to really suss out which of the Canadian supply is milled out of African beans rather than being milled out of domestic beans. But if you can look at these charts here, I think we can paint a picture that it's certainly a factor that as we've seen that African product come in, as you can see from this kind of orangish yellow bar, then you can see, look at those soybean meal imports, look at the soybean imports. Canada has seen the price advantages and they've seen a great arbitrage opportunity. They can buy cheap beans out of Africa, can mill them in Canada, can ship it south to us. We're happy to take it. And it's been a great deal for everyone, except for, domestic U.S. farmers. So it's a great deal for the end user at the very least. And that's going to be a factor. We continue to see large volumes shipped to North America. Now, I've been speaking about Africa in generality, but obviously Africa is a continent. India, the advantage of being a country. So maybe just go a little bit on that breakdown. You can see one thing that makes it interesting, that it has been kind of spread out. Now, obviously, Togo's the big boy. Togo ships us about half of the organic soybeans. But you can see other large players in here: Nigeria, Ethiopia, Uganda, Ghana, and then a lot of smaller ones. I'll admit, I didn't know Benin, or maybe it's Benin, was even a country in Africa until I saw it in organic import data. But they're shipping us organic beans now, so I guess I gotta know who they are. And the fact that it's multiple countries provides us with some advantages. With India, there was a lot of exposure to risks as a result of the concentration. And obviously we saw that happen because it was one country. All it took was the Department of Commerce to step in and say, things don't look good here, and it collapsed, and it drove the price up, $10, $15. Well, it wasn't too hard to talk the Department of Commerce into investigating a country that's sending us, hundreds of thousands of metric tons. When you have, a half dozen countries sending us 40, 50,000 metric tons each, it's a little bit harder to convince the Department of Commerce to go in and put the money and the manpower and the time into figuring out all of what's going on here. So there's less of a picture of that sort of import picture, of that sort of tariff going into place. You also have less of an impact on weather. India's fairly big, but Africa is bigger. So you could have a weather issue, you could have a drought in West Africa, continue to get plenty of stuff out of the Horn, or vice versa. In terms of new risks, there's really in terms of what kind of tools there are to cause imports to get hinky. There was, like I said, there was the government tool we talked about. The other is more on the certifier side. And this is something we've seen happen before, where some certifications will look questionable. So the NOP will go to the certifier and say, all your certifications in this country, they're no good anymore, you have to go do them again. And this has happened in Turkey, it happened in India, and it could happen in all of Africa. It could, Africa has, a couple of certifiers that are certifying large volumes of these operations. And if the NOP became convinced that there was some weird stuff coming out, that there was, maybe some fraudulent product coming in, they could, like I said, go in and tell the certifier, you got to recertify all of your African operations. And this has some potential for some short-term chaos. Everyone's going to have to rush to recertify. The certifiers are going to have a rough time with it. But generally, you get a little bit of a lenience period. And 3-4 months, everyone's back up and running again. At least most people are. So you have a little bit more of a safer supply picture here. Now, there are certainly, new supply risks as a result of that. You can see, we have a couple of major players there in East Africa, and a lot of them used to be shipping us product. It would ship up through the Red Sea, through the Mediterranean out to us. Well, the Red Sea is basically impassable now for shipping operations, as far as shippers are concerned, at least. So now that leads to a new question. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to ship it down south around the coast? Are you going to ship it east? We actually see some product that ships drops some stuff off in Canada and does the full stuff in China, and does the full loop. But then there are new risks of being exposed to that region. That, like I said, all it took was a little bit of was some conflict in the Red Sea, and now we've seen some of that product become significantly more expensive. I was speaking to an importer who told me that his shipper is charging him something like $24 more per metric ton on imports, just as a result of all the chaos here. And even interesting things like, this may be a bit of a tangent, but the UK has a huge shortage of organic soybean meal right now because a lot of the Chinese producers that were supplying the UK saw their shipping prices jump and said, we're not going to pay that, we're pulling out of the contracts. It's maybe a bit of a tangent, but like I said, this exposes us to new risks, but also to new safeties. And like I said, I think Africa will continue to be a major player in the market. They'll continue to expand. They have lots of good land. Labor is much cheaper. Their inputs generally are much cheaper than they are in the U.S. So we'll continue to see some growth there. We'll continue to see Africa become the major supplier of organic soybeans. That takes me to the end of my presentation. I'd like to take a brief moment for just a little bit of self-promotion. Our ability at Argus to put together this sort of data comes from our large network of contacts with the organic industry. I'm regularly speaking to everyone on every side, everyone from farmers, traders, brokers, elevators, end users on a regular cadence to get their thoughts. What do you guys see in the market? I'm giving them my thoughts. And those conversations are where we get a lot of the data that supplies us. So if you heard me talk for, about 50 minutes and you said, this sounds interesting, I'd love to, hear what more of this guy and his colleagues have to say, I would love to have you as a contact. I'd love to talk stuff with you more regularly. My contact information is up here. Give me a call, shoot me an email. Otherwise, you can track me down. I'll be around today, and I'll give you a business card. I won't try to sell you anything. That's not my job, though if you do want this data, I can connect you with our sales guy, a very nice gentleman. But that takes me to the end of my presentation. And I think we can then move on to any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. So if folks have questions, again, you're welcome to come up to the microphone. That was probably a bit more of a pessimistic tone that I would have liked the conference to get, but it's great to understand and know, what are some of the dynamics that we can expect, and just the realities of just some of the challenges that we might be facing as an organic community. We had a sense that this was going to be the case, so we tried to build into the conference some tools to address these challenges, particularly with corn and soybeans. So some of that is related to diversification of markets, some diversification of crops. At the roundtables later, we have Mike Schultz, who is from NFO and O-Farm, to talk about navigating turbulent organic grain markets and some options there. I also would encourage folks to check out programmings for organic transition and other state programs. There is funding out there, increasing amount of funding, not only for organic transition, but also through some of the climate smart commodities programs. A lot of what we do in organic related to cover crops and crop diversification and manure management already fits into climate smart agriculture. And some of these programs do help with transition, even transition to climate smart practices, and have payments for cover crop use. And so we're, as part of the O-Grain program, hoping to also aggregate a directory of all these different opportunities, because certainly if you can look at getting some of these incentive payments and being able to get paid $40 an acre for cover cropping, it's going to help bump up that profitability per acre as we see these prices, unfortunately, swing down to the lower end of things. So yeah, throughout the conference, check out some of the options with diversification, rotation diversification, some of the different financial programs that are out there, as well as some of the marketing options. So again, please feel free to come up and ask some questions about market dynamics. Mike, I don't know if you want to come up quickly too and talk about, just give a plug for O-Farm as we look at markets. It looks like a couple folks lined up.
One thing that was not in your presentation is who are the users of these imported soybeans, so we know who to support and who not to support when we sell.
We have that data available through our import data. We do have, who's importing. You can hide that somehow, but we have that. I don't like to name names. I'm not going to ruffle any feathers. But if you're interested in that, I could get you access to the data that would show you that.
We're hearing anecdotally that the standard of living in Western Europe has dropped, especially in Germany, and that has affected the demand for organic food quite drastically. I know it's hit some dairy farmers extremely hard. Are you tracking, and how much impact is that having on the organic market, particularly with the connection between Canada and northeastern United States, exporting into Europe. At this point, we're actually feeling pressure for some things trying to come back from there because of their flagging demand. So I'd like, if you're tracking that, just your comments on that.
Yeah, we're keeping a little bit of an eye on that. Like I said, I maybe focus a little more on the supply side and a little bit more on the feed side. My food colleagues might have a little more commentary, but I think one of the pictures I maybe didn't get too much is obviously consumer demand is the bedrock of all of this. If no one's going to buy it, there's no use growing it. Just no one's going to buy it. Lots of people aren't going to buy if they can't sell their chicken. So at this point, I think there's the potential for broad economic recession seems to have receded. That's not my opinion. That's the broad opinion of economists. But so hopefully we won't see too much of that. But like I said, demand is the bedrock. I don't have too much detail specifically on Germany, though.
Mike Schultz with NF Organics. I guess looking at your bearish report, I'm more of a bull in the market. I feel on these imports that we're getting too reliant on them. I mean, it's only going to be a matter of time before that market comes back up domestically. There's no doubt about it, guys. So
yeah, I agree. The market's going to come out. Going to come eventually. Like, I don't want to say it's not coming out. It's going to take a while. And I think the thing with the imports, like I said, especially on the soybean side, the simple fact is that we just need them in the market. Unfortunately, that it's not possible to grow enough beans domestically to feed even like half of our demand.
And I know from this last year that the growing conditions were really spotty.
Oh, yeah,
so I don't know that it was really a record crop by any means out there. So just my point.
I respect. Yeah.
No.
I always like hearing other perspectives.
I was curious, do you have any data on land in transition to organic? Like over the next 3 years in the U.S., is there going to be more crop acres transitioned to organic or decertified from organic from people stepping back with the volatile markets? And also, have you noticed much of a difference with grass-fed organic milk, like those farms shifting from feeding grains to being forage only? Like, how much has that affected grain markets or use?
In terms of in transition, I don't have any specific data on that. I can say anecdotally, I've heard it's come off a little bit. No one's too excited by the prices. But in terms of decertification, we have seen, though acres are up, we have seen the number of organic farms coming down, and we expect that to continue. So in a broad picture, you see across agriculture where you see more larger farms. So I think really the picture on that is going to continue to depend on prices. How exciting does it look to transition, and how additionally profitable is it to hold on to your organic certification? Once you're certified organic, you don't want to give it up. It's like 3 years of investment. It's a lot of money. But eventually some people are going to consider that, especially the more marginal players.
You touched a little bit on kind of the organic soybean oil market here domestically. What are the fundamentals that you see kind of driving that increase in demand for organic soybean oil?
Some of that's, there's a lot of chaos in the oil market right now as a result of ethanol. There's generally a good amount of divorce between conventional and organic markets, but they certainly do interplay a little bit. We've seen, one of the reasons why organic soybean oil isn't too valuable is if you go to like a Whole Foods and pick up a box of granola bars, they always have, it's gluten-free, it's this free, it's grass-fed, and one thing they like to put on there is soybean-free, like people have soy allergies or whatnot. So the food market has been kind of weak. We have seen some returns in cosmetics and industrial use, which has been really driving it, as well as some more food demand. Ukraine and Russia are major players in oils, both organic and conventional, and they've obviously come off as a result of significant conflict in the region. So some people have simply said, we've got to use something, so might as well use soybean. So there's definitely some potential for that to change if the situation in that region normalizes.
I'm James Longenecker from the Real Organic Project. Speaking of government programs combined with the different markets, has there been much exploration or data around alternative markets? There's been a lot of support there's been some support for regional redevelopment and trying to get processors closer to production sites. Has that made any budge in the market?
I think not at this point. I don't think it's pretty new, but I think there's potential for that. We have one of the data products we supply is a map of organic processing, and I have a colleague who's in the process of updating that. And from what she's told me, at least anecdotally from her perspective, we seem to see, there are plenty of people out there buying. I think it's going to take some time to be developed. There's obviously plenty of new questions in terms of things like regenerative and also some new labels, but regenerative I think is too early to really guess its effect on the market. It's not well enough defined or standardized.
Good morning. On these, as we're strengthening these enforcement rules for organics domestically, are they? I realize they're doing that across the globe, basically, on these import markets. Does that actually put USDA following the same rules that we're following here? Does that put boots on the ground in those production fields to verify that they're doing the same things we're doing here as these crops are being imported? Then.
Yes, so the certifying bodies do have some increased responsibilities as a result of this, some more regular investigations. Obviously, that sort of stuff is handled by the certifier rather than by the USDA specifically, but there are some trends in that you need to have a little more boots on the ground, a little bit more of a look at some of those, how many boots on the ground, how many times you actually check in your operations. But time will tell how much of an impact that has. I think there's a lot of still uncertainty on what this rule will fully look like upon full implementation, even though it's next month.
Well, thank you. Thank you again to Alex for that really thorough overview. We really appreciate you sharing all of what the data that Argus has collected.